Welcome to the Houston Comedy Film Festival Uncut Edition. I am your host, Roselyn, and I am with a special guest, Youssef. Youssef, how do I say your last name properly? Because I want to put respect on your name.
Mutawe is good enough.
Mutawe? Youssef
That's good
Mutawe.
enough.
Youssef, I am so honored to be speaking with you because you're behind the magic of a couple of films, but today we are talking about you being the award winner for A Bit Much for the best dark comedy microfilm. And yay, I got to give you your flowers. I got to
Thank
give
you,
you
thank you,
flowers.
thank you.
Can you talk about this very funny film that I know many of us have experienced when we've lost our devices?
Yeah, funny enough, it came from a true story in a sense where a friend of mine, I was at her place and we were, just hanging out. She told me, "Hey, actually I lost my phone earlier." I said, "What do you mean you lost your phone earlier?" She's like, "Somebody took it from me at a Burger King." And I was like, "Have you tried to call it?" She's like, "No, no." She's very passive, doesn't really want to like, if it's gone kind of thing. I was like,
She's
"I think we
very
could get it
engaged.
back. Let's give it a shot. Let's call the phone and see what happens." So a guy picks up, similar to the guy actually in the story where he's like, "Oh, everybody knows me as this honest guy, and like I just like give me a little bit of money and I'll give it back to you." And I'm like, "This guy definitely, well, whether or not he took the phone, this is probably not how you should be approaching the situation." But we went down and we got the phone back, and it really wasn't that big of an issue. But then 2, 3 weeks later, something like that, Obi, who's the main actor in the film, Obi Domino, he reached out to Noel, who was playing his roommate, who's actually my roommate and also a filmmaker.
Nice.
He reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you have anything going on in the next 2 weeks? I have an open schedule right now. I guess, a shoot didn't go through." And Noel said, "Nah," but he came downstairs, mentioned it to me. I said, "I could probably cook something up." So I cooked something up, and then we got people together that had nothing to do during the winter. Like we just all had an open schedule at this time, still very early on. We're still early in our careers, but even earlier in our careers where there's a lot more downtime. And shot the thing over 2 nights. And
And
that's the movie. That's how we made it, at least. It was very, very quick and very cold.
I was about to say that's very impressive because I'm a true African and I do not do well in cold weather. I do not.
No, I was born and raised in Winnipeg, so I was more cut out for those nights than everybody else involved in the film here. So it was a lot of guilt as I was shooting it, being like, I can't believe I'm making them go outside right now. But
But that's
they
really
pulled
cool.
through, and yeah.
Yeah. And actually, while I have you, do you mind if we
Hmm.
actually share your trailer? Because I would love to show people.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Let me just share that real quick because it's awesome. One second. So let me do this and let me just press play. And I know I've done this before, so I know people can hear it.
That's a bit much for a phone, isn't it?
It's not about the phone, man. It's about the principle. It's my fucking whip. All right?
I love it. And so definitely tell everybody about the plot of this movie. They can see the awesome editing.
Yeah, the the plot. It's a guy gets his phone stolen. He thinks it's stolen. Whether it is or not, you kind of figure out later. But there's a little bit of an air of like, is he in it for why is he so invested in the phone? Although it's made pretty clear early on that his rent money is in the case between his phone and the case. So really, his entire journey is, I want to go get my phone back by any means necessary because I need the phone. Uh, Calls it using his roommates. His roommate is also his landlord, so I need the rent right now. But on his way to get the phone, he runs into things that I have seen happen within Toronto before, people getting, electric scooters stolen and things like that. And it's just about this guy that's stressed out, trying to be able to pay his rent. Um, just a common theme in Toronto, I assume. Well, I know a common theme around the world right now. So it's kind of a funny, exaggerated situation that ties back into an anxiety that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job just the way that everything was played out because you also made it very relatable into the market today. So anybody that's watching it, many people, they would relate to what they see. And I wanted to ask you because it's already one thing because you guys shot in extremely cold weather for us here in the South that are not used to it. What were some of the challenges that you had? I'm just curious, outside of the cold weather, were there any other challenges that you had outside of the cold in the creation of this project?
Challenges of it were, I would say there weren't really any challenges during production. Everybody was pretty straightforward and like everybody knows what we're doing. We all
Nice.
know each other and we're all friends. I brought in some of these like side characters that get involved later on because I just wanted to work with actors that I had worked with previously. So I wanted to just bring them on board. So the cold was a bit of an issue, but we shot all around the neighborhood that I live in. So we had very quick access to a warm area and we kept the van nearby on warm. So if anybody needed to warm up, they had a place to go.
Yes.
The biggest issue was probably in post, and it just had to do with people forgetting the reason why this guy is outside doing what he's doing. You know, he
Mm.
gets sidetracked with these people that try to steal his scooter, and then by the time that finishes, people were confused as to what's happening. They'd forgotten. So there's some very minor reshoots that I did and some fixing in post. And the reshoots I didn't bring Obi back in. I actually used another collaborator of mine who wasn't involved on the set at that point. He wasn't here with us, but we just used him as a body double and drove around and got some shots and stitched them together. And that kind of ended up with that little montage that happens kind of in the middle where I overlay the voice of Noel, who is the actor for the roommate. And just to remind people, it's about the rent. It's about the rent. It's about the rent.
I like
But
that
that's it. Yeah.
you found a solution in order to like resolve that particular issue that you had in post. Because I know that's what some people they struggle with. So that's really good that
Yeah.
you up. And when it comes down to the highlights, I know you had a whole bunch of highlights because I saw some funny moments. What were your favorite moments behind the creation of this project?
Oh man. Well, one of my favorite, I think most of them tie back to the scene with the wrench itself, which was the tentative title for the film for the longest time was just wrench because that's the weapon of choice. One is definitely me getting hit by the wrench. That's me is the guy that gets hit by the wrench. I don't know if you can recognize me. I got my hair cut. It's not so long anymore. Um, and I didn't have my glasses on. Most people don't even know it's me in the first place.
You have a whole
But
new
yeah,
look right now.
yeah, I got a fake foam wrench that's like an exact copy of the one that we used.
Yeah.
And I just told him just hit me with it. Like I'm happy to go down as long as it's not a real wrench. We've got no problem. So he really whacked me with it. It feels like nothing though. It's foam. That was fun. And there were just the moments where I got to let Obi do his thing was
Mm.
a blast. When he was running away after the assault takes place, and after the girl finds the body, and there's the implication that she knows the guy. There's the two coffee cups and things. That always kind of goes here or there, whether people pick up on that. But either way, he's running away from a witness. He asked, "Well, how do you want me to run?" I said, I just want you to run. Just like do what feels right. Like I find a lot of the times the less you direct, the more interesting. As long as the actor's comfortable, the more interesting a performance you're gonna get. So he just cooked it. And I think there was only 2 takes of that. I said, "Oh, do that even more, just lean more into that, just like wackiness, do whatever." Love that a
Wow.
lot. That was a lot of fun. I would say the other though was the drinking of the soup on the table in the house. That was Campbell's soup, uncooked. It was straight out of the can. Noel probably went through 2 cans, and it was the most disgusting thing
Oh,
that he had eaten in years, but he just kept committing to it. So there's that moment I slipped in there that was between takes where he spits it out, and that was um, a genuine spit. Genuine, like, I don't want any part of this soup right now. I need to get it out of my mouth. I can't swallow anymore. you know.
right. I
But
I really
that was fun.
I was gonna say, Youssef, I really like the way that you just spoke about your directing style, where you really give your actors the free reign. as long as, it's following the script, of course, but you give them free reign to have their own style. Can you talk about just even more so of, I would say, you giving your actors that freedom? I feel like it made the film even better and more fun, and you can feel it as a user, like as a person, consumer watching it on the screen. Can you talk about more about your style and any tips you would have for other directors?
Oh, my main approach, generally speaking, is to make sure that there's an actor attached to it that's really invested in the idea of what we're doing. And whether it's a serious project like some stuff that I'm working on right now or something more playful like this one,
Yeah.
it's finding somebody that sees the character as a real person that they want to embody, exaggerated or not. And really, it comes down to I want the actor to do what they want to do. And then generally, my role as the director is to reel them back in at times where I need them to be more subtle. Let them go crazy, let them do what they want to do. I also shot a film last summer, which just is finished today. As of today, it's done.
Congrats, you
And
finished it. Yes.
yeah, that one took a while for a lot of reasons, but it's great. But I used complete non-actors for the entire thing. And there was a big thing that actually I learned from Kirsten, who was directing another film that was in the festival this year. When I was on set with her a couple of years ago when she was directing something, and she would tell the actors all the time, just throw it away, throw the line away, because she's an actor as well and she teaches acting. She understands actors and approaches and techniques and things like this more than I would as somebody who came into this as an editor and director.
Yeah.
So throwing it away a lot of the time is great. Just have the actor not care about the line that they're saying, and the way that they say it is going to be so heavily influenced by the editing and everything you've built around them that the audience is going to interpret whatever you want them to interpret off of that. The actor doesn't need to try so hard to push these emotions, and you don't need to try to get them to do that thing to get a message across. It comes down to crying as well. If somebody can't cry, you got to tell them don't cry. Don't even try, because you're going to be thinking about your face the entire time, and people are going to see that. Just
Yeah.
feel the emotions, and if a tear comes out, it comes out. If none come out, you're still feeling what you need to feel. So it's really
I
all about
love
that for me.
I love what you're saying. And you said something also when it comes out in post. And so if let's just say what you said with an actor and they go with how they feel, and maybe you have to modify things based off of maybe they can't cry. As an editor, how would you focus on tackling that within post-production as an editor?
Ooh, I don't
Oh,
know
I
if
gave
there's any
I
one
gave you
way.
a twist
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to describe something like that. It's a lot of problem solving in post, just like it is in every aspect when it comes to script writing or directing, or if you're a DP or an AD. There's a lot of problems that need to be solved throughout things, and each one kind of has its own solution, and a lot of problems have solutions that are a combination of solutions that you've learned for other things.
Yeah.
Um, if somebody's not giving the performance that you feel is necessary and you're in post already, you can't, um, fix it on the day.
Mhm.
A lot of it comes down to just knowing when to cut away from the person. Um, I watching a lot of films in this sense where you're watching somebody get really emotional. The moment they stopped being convincing is the moment the editor cut away.
Ooh.
It saves the performance, it saves, the entire tone of that moment and the pacing of those moments. So a lot of it is you keep the actor on frame for as long as you believe what they're portraying.
That was that was great. That was a great piece of advice right there, because sometimes, some people, they are married to every second of the film and they don't want to cut. They
Hmm.
don't want to let it go. And so that's really great. How long did it take you to even acquire that skill? Because when I think about you, it's kind of like you're very gifted and talented, because the way that your brain works, you're not only directing it and you're controlling it, from one aspect of it, but then you also you love every part of what you've done. And so how long did it take you to get to that point where it's like, let it go?
Um, kind of learned on my first my thesis project outside of film school, because there's just so much time spent on trying to make it perfect, and at a certain point you just say it is what it is, accept it the way that it is. That actually also got into Houston. That was The Perfect Crime a couple of years ago. That's why I
Nice.
reapplied. I was like, hey, I got in once. I could probably, maybe I could get in again. I don't know. If I added in the cover letter saying that I was involved before. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It's a year and a half or so, but I had been editing other people's projects as well. So I was learning a lot from the other people's mistakes, early directors' mistakes. And I'm a big proponent in sharing my opinion as an editor as well. Um, and doing that leads to me, if they say, oh yeah, okay, I trust you, we should do what you proposed we should do, I do it. If it doesn't work, well, there I've learned something and it hasn't affected the end product of my film or theirs, because we just change it afterwards. Yeah, a lot
I
of it just comes down to flexibility and understanding, what is worth putting the effort into, and how good is something going to be before all the changes you make are you know
absolutely.
virtually pointless. Yeah.
No, I love that answer. Very, very real. And then even learning from other people's mistakes. And if we go back to just even you and what you've done with this particular film, what is your personal goal? So, like, what do you want to accomplish with now you submitted this film? I want anybody that's watching, that's paying attention, listening for the right eyes. What do you want to see from this?
From this film or from
This or even any other projects you want to talk about. I always like asking this
hmm
question on camera because you never know what some people their thoughts are. They want to see more, maybe a series, maybe a premiere.
hmm
Sure.
So I just did a bunch of grant applications recently. So I was writing a lot about my process and what my goals are, and like why I'm making the films that I'm making and why I've made the previous ones and how they all connect to each other. And I ended up landing on the idea that, and it's just kind of happens this way, I think, that people make films that leapfrog off of each other or relate to each other in some sense. The most typical and used example that's kind of cliche at this point is Christopher Nolan always does something based on time.
Mhm.
Um, and not to compare myself or anybody with Christopher Nolan, but like just as artists, most people want to say one thing, and then the next thing they want to say will probably be different than that. And moving forward, they want to be different, but there's usually a through line because you're still the same person. It's like
Yeah.
as people change, they're still them. So there is something that remains, and
Mhm.
usually many things that remain.
Yes.
So as long as you have a voice at least, and that's still something I'm figuring out for myself, what my voice is in terms of directing and the stories I want to tell. But the more I go, the more I realize it's something like the tone of A Bit Much, but maybe a little more restrained. And dealing with anxiety is something that I've always loved to write about. Film was kind of my way of dealing with anxiety when I was younger, not that much younger, but younger, late teens.
Yeah.
Um, it's like a safe environment to grapple with anxiety and to kind of understand yourself through this lens as
Mm.
somebody who grew up very anxious and who is much less so now because of that, because of film and because of actively trying to, solve these problems within myself. So I wanted to do that. And then my last film came along and it was very personal and very, resonant with myself and with my family. And that made me realize that anxiety is still a propellant that I want to use, but a lot of the anxiety stems, or how I want to deal with it is within the context of identity and what causes the anxiety and the implications of that anxiety, the actions it makes you take. In the case of A Bit Much, the actions that he took are rash and reactionary and negative, even though I didn't intend for that to happen, or intend for that connection to exist. It
Mhm.
ended up, being that way. So I see how everything that I'm making is kind of related to what came before it, and even the scripts I'm writing for the future, because I have a plan for my next one and I have a plan for the one after that.
Mhm.
And then a couple features in the works that I'm working on with other people, but they all are bouncing off of each other. And then I plan, I'm writing one for after the next, and then after I shoot the next, I'm going to go back to the script and take what I've learned about identity, anxiety, and all these themes, and then, you know, alter that next script to be really a progress. You know, I assume if I'm progressing as a person, my script should also be progressing in that sense. It should be following myself in some sense. I'm not sure. I'm still working it out. So like describing it's a little tricky right now. There's a lot of
No,
still piecing the sentences together, but
I
I think that makes sense.
it definitely does make sense in a way, because it's like, you know, many of us, when it comes down to anxiety and then the stresses of life and the world, you, in a way, you almost see yourself within the character. Is that how you write in a way, or inspiration from your friends?
No, yeah, it's all parts of me. Um, every character that I write has something to do with me. I can't imagine completely trying to conceive of somebody that I don't relate to on any sense. There's people also say that you need to love your characters, even the most like hated ones, and I subscribe to that methodology as well. Because how are
Yeah.
you going to write somebody honestly if you hate them? You know, it's you're going to be biased against them as a person. You need to always you can dislike somebody, but you need to love them at the same time. You know.
Wow. I just love the way that you just said that. And man, I feel like you do so much. Do you ever happen to, what happened? Do you get writer's block? That's the question.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, how
I
do you, yeah, tell me more about that.
yeah, I try not to frame it as writer's block because it feels like some unseen force that can't be dealt with, like a natural disaster, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but there were 6 months recently that I couldn't write anything for, you know, personal reasons, and I just recently got out of that, which is nice. And now I'm writing like 5 things simultaneously, some that I'm going back
Wow.
to and other things. And then, you know, there's like days where I don't write at all, and then there's days where I'll write just part of one of the scripts, or I'll just be brainstorming, thinking about it, whatever. Um, but how to get out of that? I would say you just gotta, for me at least, I just gotta not be so concerned that I'm not writing now because I know I'll write later.
Yeah.
There's times where I do put effort into writing, but a lot of the times it's like you try to force yourself to write when you don't feel like you're in a good place to do it. It's just bad idea after bad idea, or you whether the idea is bad or not, you just look at it as if it is that. So writing is good when you can't write, because when you can write, you'll look back at those things that you did write, and maybe there's a good idea there, or an idea that resonates with you at that time. But I would say there's a good example, which is the script I'm working on now that I'll be shooting in the spring, assuming I get the money to shoot it. Which
We're gonna
is
claim
I
it.
kind of
It's on its way. The
I
money's on its way, okay?
yes, it is. I'm trying to get I'm gonna manifest. I'm trying to get 80 grand for it, so we'll see. Um, you know, at least 40. 40 is the bottom.
Okay.
So fingers crossed. But there's a methodology I used because when I first started writing that, I couldn't write for I think it was 4 months. I didn't write anything, and I gave myself a set of rules. It was like I call it my manifesto, which is like I'm not allowed to write characters' names. I'm not allowed to write locations. I'm not allowed to, you know, use a phone at all in the script. So it was basically just character one through it ended up being seven, and I would just name them character one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. It got very confusing after a while, but it was just dialogue. And when I ended up going back to that, I looked at it and then started breaking the rules because I had there's some idea that existed there. I was basically just spilling complete trash conversations that had nothing to do with anything at all, and then going back to them, you start to see that they actually you're almost saying something. There's some type of subconscious or something that you want to say is almost coming out of that. And you start putting names to the characters, putting faces to them, putting them in places, and then all of a sudden there's a story. In my case, that worked. That got me out of it. So if I'm ever stuck in a writer's block and feel like it's been too long and feeling like waiting isn't working, I'll probably try that again. We'll see what happens. But you know, it's worked once, so that is not a scientific method at all. So don't quote me on that as being a tried and true methodology because I don't know. But
I
I ended up loving the script, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said. I mean, there's several things that I like. And I kind of wanted to go back just to the anxiety part, and then when you think about yourself as a character and how many of us can relate to that character, um, I'm curious with all the creations that you're doing, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh, I don't really worry about legacy too much. I don't really care about that. I guess I want to have kids, so I want my kids to remember me fondly. That's pretty much it. And my friends, and like leave some kind of a mark in a
Even the people
relatively
around
small
you.
circle.
Yeah, even the people around you, because you, like at the end of
Hmm.
the way that I look at you, you're a leader within your space, and so many people they trust you where their careers are also within your hands. And so, even though sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't want to save the world," but the people around you and your family and your kids and the people on your team, like it seems as though you've made a very positive impact within all of them.
I try. I surround myself with people that make a positive impact with me. So I imagine if they want anything to do with me, I'm probably doing an okay job of of giving back in that sense, you know? So
I
that's the
love.
hope, you know, just leave the world a little bit better, at least leave my space a little bit better than how I entered it.